You're live, Councillor.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the meeting for Children and Families and Education. I am Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for the portfolio. Just a little bit of housekeeping, safety information. I'm not expecting a fire alarm, so if it sounds, evacuate the room and the public gallery, not that anyone's up with that, via the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts and assemble in front of Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. And if you signed in, please sign out on the way. It's live web streamed. It's webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. The public viewing area is in view of the camera. Everyone speaking will be on camera. And please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Thank you. Introductions. I shall start here.
Lee Tyndall, Councillor for Copner.
Good afternoon, Councillor Hannah Brent for Drayton and Farlington.
Councillor Tom Coles, Fratton.
Welcome, members.
Sarah Daly, Director of Children, Families and Education.
Mark Jett, Head of Service for Children We Care For.
Renee Eddy, Service Leader for Building Your Futures in Portsmouth.
And welcome, officers. Okay, there are no apologies for absence. Do members have any interest to declare? No. That's good. Well, in which case we'll go on to the first report, which is the Regional Care Cooperative. And Sarah, are you presenting this? Over to you.
Okay. So, in February 2023, the DFE published Stable Homes Built on Love. This was quite something. The word love in the title about a report relating to children, and I think it was something that was applauded by everybody. That piece of work talked about a number of different strategies and approaches to respond to what was seen as a crisis across children's services and the capacity and availability to respond to children in need protection and children looked after within the system. It also talked about the wider system supporting those children and the capacity to support them at the lowest level, leaning into communities and families. The area we're wanting to bring your attention to today is around the Regional Care Cooperative Pathfinder. There are two that have been awarded in the country, one in Greater Manchester and one in the South East region. And it's really great that we can see that all of the authorities are engaged in this process, are wanting to work together, because one of the greatest challenges for children's services is finding the right place and the right placement and the right care for our children in the system. I would stress that in Portsmouth we do an amazing job. We work really well with our local foster carers who provide a significant amount of care for those children in our city. Because they're in our city, they're able to meet their needs in terms of education, in terms of mental health, and we are able to provide a better service because our social workers are able to visit them at increased levels of frequency when need demands it. For a small number of children who aren't going to be placed with foster carers, we are looking at children's homes, which was previously referred to as residential units. We're moving away from that language, again, back to that language of homes where our children are able to live stable lives. What we know is that there are not enough placements for those children, and you will have all seen in the news the national crisis, the ask of local authorities to place children at a distance, and that worst case scenario when we're unable to find any placement for a child and have to make up bespoke arrangements for children cared for by agency workers who are at times based in B&B accommodation and at the very worst times, as we've seen in other authorities, living in caravans. The big concern is for the needs of the children in those situations whose needs are simply not being met. They have experienced trauma and that trauma isn't being addressed. In addition to that, we have to question the amount of money that is being paid. We have heard authorities talking of placements costing £60,000 a week. We know that that will impact on the ability of us to provide a better service to all our children, as our finances cannot stretch that far. So that's a bit of background setting as to why the Regional Care Cooperative is such an important thing for us. This will bring together all authorities in the South East to work together to better understand the children that we're caring for, where we struggle to find the right placement, and actually how we might care for them in a better way, working together to increase the capacity of homes across the area. You'll see that we have been funded, been given £5 million of capital funding. You will appreciate that won't go far, but it is hopefully going to mean that we can open and deliver 4 children's homes across the area. A small number, but a small number more than we already have. In addition to that, there's revenue funding to fund those senior roles to support this project to move forward, to lean into the ICB in terms of the health conversations that we have. These are children who have great health needs. What's the package of care that they need? In addition to this, the aim is to better control the market, to have those conversations, to control the commissioning, so that we are not being gazumped, because that is what's happening. We are being gazumped in the same way as you are in the housing market. When somebody else is willing to pay more for a child, the placement suddenly disappears. We will work together and we will behave better by that governance arrangement. So there's some big ambition tied to this, and a lot of eyes watching to see what success we can achieve. But it is around that negotiating power. It is increasing sufficiency, and it is about meeting the needs of those children who at the moment we are simply failing. So we are confident that we are moving forward at pace. There are a lot of expectations and demands, and the time scale for this is short. But we have Lucy Butler from West Sussex has now been appointed as the lead, so the DCS. So she will leave her DCS role for the period of this project, and she will lead that for us. So we have a local lead who already has a great deal of knowledge. We were involved in a previous project which did look at understanding those children who we would be seeking a system such as this for. So we already know who some of those children are and what their needs look like, and actually therefore what that package of support around them will look like. Following the work that's done, obviously there will be a lot of leaning in to understand what's worked and what hasn't worked, and what we can continue to do and what we can't continue to do. This is short-term funding. I don't know how many times I've spoken about short-term funding, and whilst it's great to receive the money, the frustration is that we are again working to a cliff edge that will not see the cost benefit in the time of the programme. So again, we need to revisit those conversations with government about, if this does work, what more is needed in terms of ongoing funding. But it's fantastic to be a part of this, and it's fantastic to see this opportunity in the South East.
Thank you, Sarah. That's a really, really good summary. A sort of nice balance between the positives and the challenges, really. So thank you for that. Do any members have either any questions or any comments that they want to? Lee?
Yeah, Sarah, just my one question was that I know we have a number of individuals outside of Portsmouth in care. Do they fit under all of these, or are they still outside?
Well, I'll start that response, and I might come to Mark and Renee. But the children who aren't placed in the city, there will be a small number who are placed at a distance in a planned way, that is the right decision for them, and they are well matched in their placement, or they are well matched in the provision that they're in, and it's meeting some of their very specific individual needs. So for some of them, it's the right thing. There are a small number of children who are not in the right placement, who are in the placement because it's the only placement in the country that we could find for them. And we have a very small number of children for whom we are not achieving the right levels of stability. And I'm going to pass to Mark, because I think I know the number, having just heard it in the meeting, but I may have already forgotten it running over. So I'm going to pass to Mark for a little bit more detail.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that of course, we want to do better. We want our children to be local, because that's right for them in terms of community and family, and also the wraparound support that we can provide them. But actually, when you look nationally, we do really well. Yeah. So we really perform well in terms of making sure kids are local. And I think from memory, we've only probably got, I say only, it's still too much, but I think there's about 12% are placed 20 miles or beyond from Portsmouth. Still too many, but actually not too bad. And in terms of placement stability, because that also comes into it, because usually the more stable the child, the easier to meet their needs, and that often also then means a local provision. And again, we do really well at actually providing stability for children, certainly in the long term, and generally speaking in the short term. But, you know, we have a number of children, a small number of children who have such complex needs that it's very difficult to meet those needs. And so they tend to move around a little bit more than we'd like. And we do all we can to try and minimise that.
Thank you. Good question. Any?
Can I just ask something? So the project, does it finish in June 25?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when it runs. And so it was saying that up to 5 million capital funding to develop your new provisions. That'll be the 4 homes.
Yeah, so business cases are being put together and are being completed as we speak, really. We're having a meeting tomorrow that will cover some of this off, but there are 4 homes being requested in terms of business case opportunities, but they will still need to be signed off centrally by the government. So that's our ambition. That's within the capital grant that we've been given, but we still await final sign-off within the project.
So it's still kind of fingers crossed that it will go through. And what impact will this have on our young children in terms of not maybe numbers, not numbers, like how will we be looking in that sense?
I think for us as a city, we always lean towards foster care being our preferred choice for our children, wherever it's the most appropriate placement for them. And we have a very successful fostering service, which is bolstered by Mockingbird. And I touch on that because that's actually now an element of the RCC work as well. We're part of the broader fostering hub now across the region, which is seeking to not compete against each other. I don't want to be driving a bus that's got Foster West Sussex on the back of it when I'm in the city of Portsmouth, but that is what we've seen, and we're hoping the regional hub will get away with that. So we have a focus within this on increasing foster care numbers for our younger children and for any child where foster care is the right thing for them. We don't anticipate large numbers requiring this. I think when we last looked, there were probably about 6 or 7 children that we felt really would benefit from this programme. We have got homes in the city already. We've got homes that are good and providing good care to our children. The reason why we haven't chosen to put in a bid as part of this capital expenditure is because we don't have the infrastructure to support those homes. We want them to be the best they can. We can support 3 homes. To do any more would really stretch us and pull us away from the work we need to do. So we think about 6 children, but also we think that the benefits of controlling the market better will enable other children to have more stability. So the overall effect will be for every child in the city because they'll all have their place where they should be.
Yeah.
I think my fellow opposition spokespersons have covered that. Everyone I was going to ask, so thank you.
So, thank you, and they're really good questions as well. I'm obviously a bit closer to it, but I still learn something every single week. And I think it's... my question when the opportunity first came up is, are we going to have our good practice diluted by sharing it over a bigger footprint? Which you do, don't you? Because when things are tough, you don't want to jeopardise everything that's good for you by working on a larger area. And I was very much convinced that wouldn't be the case, and I think this report does bear that out. It's going to benefit everyone and strengthen our position. And in actual fact, it's another example of where we actually are a good role model and a bit of a leader in this area. And as you know, most of you, I know, Lee, you're new to this, but Hannah and Tom have been around, and this is often the case in Portsmouth. And we can be really proud of a lot of what we've got going for us, but it's at great effort and cost to maintain those levels. I suppose the only thing for me would be with the cliff edge, and I know the new government is, and in my opinion, very sensibly listening mode at the beginning, but I think, Sarah, what I would ask is that we get a message to the right person at the earliest possibility about having that conversation about what does happen at that end point, because it seems to me that it's a really sensible initiative, and we know that anything to do with investing in children's services has a very long tail. It's not like doing a quick project of putting a house in or putting in a cycle lane or whatever. It's a long lead in often for a long-term positive, hopefully, outcome. So I'd like to get those questions in around what is the future, what does the future of this look like?
I have a contact who's a minister in the Department for Education.
I think the list is getting longer, but actually it might be people within that. I mean, absolutely, let's go to the people we know, but also let's go to the people who are going to be making the decision about what happens to the future of this project. So thank you very much. Really good questions as well. And I think is it an information report? It's not a decision. The decision has been done. So move on to the next report. Is it Mark or Renee gonna present?
Afternoon. Can you hear me okay? So I have the great
Actually,
privilege-
can I just stop you there? Because
Yeah.
do we do introductions with you? Were you here? Yeah, we
Yes,
did.
Yes.
I need to get on my
Can you
pyjamas.
hear me okay? in here? Let me show. Is that any better? Yes. Okay. So I've got the great privilege to be coming to speak today about some of the marvellous work the team are doing around our reunification, so our going home work. So the report is updating on the period of January 23 to May 24, and we're providing information on our work to support children who are in our care to return home in a planned way where it's safe to do so. So Portsmouth Children's Social Care have been interested in the best way to reunify children for a number of years now. However, with the extension of the family safeguarding model, we were able to empower more children and families by embedding the adult workers into our team, so into Building Your Futures team. So we have workers that are specifically specialist around substance misuse, domestic abuse and parental mental health. And they are working alongside our children's social workers. So the going home approach is an extension of our family safeguarding model of practice and has developed and evolved in response to the experiences and our learning from outcomes from the children and families involved in the reunification process. And we've been learning from their lived experiences and adapting our practice. So Portsmouth has then reviewed its processes and paperwork to ensure there is sufficient focus on identifying need and working with strengths in families. So in terms of the going home model, when a child and family are identified to be benefiting from a going home plan, the first step is a going home assessment, which is co-produced with the child and their family to identify the areas of need and support. And then once the child are on the going home pathway, the social worker will develop the plan in collaboration with the child, parents and all of the professional network. And I have to say that that includes the foster carers, and they have been heavily involved in our going home work. So the child social worker will prepare them for a return home, and they will complete direct work or social stories in preparation. We've seen some marvellous work. And they will then create a plan and a timetable that's shared with the family and the child and the professional network. We also will then do increased home visits and support, and that will include support from the adult worker for the parent and the child social worker for the child to support any bumps in the road. So during the period of January 23 to March this year, 11 children returned home as part of a going home plan. In terms of reflections and next steps, so the Children in Care for Service continues to support children with restoring family relationships, We are supporting with improving family time or support around intensive parenting support. So we are working not just around the going home always being the outcome. We will try and promote those relationships so we can move out of family centres and move family time into a more natural environment in the community. So there's a lot of activity that's the team are doing that may not just be around the, a plan to go home. So I'm sure I've alluded to this. The work is very complex, it's time sensitive, it's intensive, and the results, it's resulted in an increased workload for a service that is already stretched to capacity. However, I have to say that the benefits far outweigh the additional work. As we know, more children continue to enter care, and in 2023, the number of children looked after by local authorities in England rose to 83,840, up 2% on last year, with a steady rise in recent years. And this is obviously set alongside an ever-growing need and demand for foster carers and children's homes with limited options. So as such, the emphasis is on ensuring wherever possible, children are considered for a going home pathway where that's safe and possible. So just to summarise, the Children We Care For service and partners are working in a dynamic and creative way to support children and families with a diverse range of needs and outcomes. This includes improving relationships, the quality of family time, progressing with a going home plan, or re-establishing links with with children's wider families to support them as they mature towards young adulthood. So the plan is to continue to review and further develop this model and learning from those lived experiences of the children that we work with. Thank you.
Thank you so much for writing and presenting that report. You can feel your pride and enthusiasm in this piece of work.
I think it's fair to say the team are very passionate about the work.
I think that comes through. So thank you to you and the whole team for the work you're doing. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this. It's a really lovely report, actually. I really enjoyed the children's journeys. It helped me to understand how these going home plans work and the challenges faced. And also, I think the first time I've ever seen Paddington Bear mentioned in an agenda. So thank you. It's a great piece of work. And thank you for bringing that.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, just my question was that children going into care rose nationally. What's the situation Portsmouth-wise? Is it increased, gone down?
That's a good question.
I can answer this one. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at over sort of a 10-year period, there has been generally a trend up, so an increase. But compared to other authorities, the spike hasn't been maybe quite as dramatic. So it's been a fairly gentle climb. There have been years when it's dipped slightly. From the last year, we've increased slightly. And again, when you compare us to others, we're pretty much on a par, certainly with our statistical neighbours. So those neighbours that have, those other authorities that have similar demographics and levels of deprivation, we're pretty much there on the same level. But again, as I said before, we would obviously aspire and hope to reduce our numbers, and part of that will be trying to, support kinship arrangements better, and certainly the going home work very much fits in with that. So, at every opportunity along the journey of the child, within, their care experience, always looking to consider return home to parents or other kinship arrangements that could be family, friends, or those within the network.
Just to follow up on that one, you said about the demands on sort of obviously putting the work in and you're seeing the rewards for that. Are you fully staffed with regards to child social workers and adult social workers of the current places that are available, or is there a gap? So
certainly in terms of the Building Your Futures team, where the that Renee's described is predominantly happening. The team is in a really good position at the moment in terms of permanent social workers. So they've had periods of difficulty, of some instability, and some agency workers, but actually at the moment a really good level of permanent worker, which is a real positive. And it's always tricky, isn't it, in terms of capacity and demand. And, you know, Renee is right in saying that with the increasing expectations of the team, obviously that has an impact, and it's trying to manage that and balance that.
Thank you. Well done.
Actually, I think it's a really good question, because I think I will come to you, Hannah, but I just wanted to jump in and say that we're always having to make judgment calls around what some people might say is the non-essential, like the preventative work, I call it the getting upstream work, and this kind of work which is hugely beneficial with a big investment. So we have absolute ambitions around these things, but you're absolutely right. In a world with bountiful resources, we could do more of this. But Sarah wants to come in on that.
I mean, I'd just like to reflect on the critical thing that we know about why people stay in a team and why people work in a team. And I have to recommend and really commend the leadership within that, both from Mark, but also importantly from Renee. And I think Renee driving home, this going home work, has really brought something new to the team. And that is a team who travel to see those children who are placed at a distance. They spend nights away from their own families because they're staying overnight because it's such a distance to travel. They drop everything at the drop of a hat when a child's placement ends. So I think to have brought some, and I'll use the expression of a friend, a colleague, to have brought some jam into that work, to give that piece that is something else, and to have been able to work alongside adult colleagues to bring parents and families back around a table. So it's not always combative, it's a relationship and it's a connection. And I give credit to both the people here who are talking about this project because they've made it work.
Thank you, Sarah. Hannah.
Actually, so it's a bit of a lump in my throat, to be honest. So I think it's outstanding the work that you do, and I think these families, children, are really, really lucky to have you all, because you can't imagine what half of what they go through and what a significant impact it will actually have. Yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Around the going home plans, I know that you're actively supporting 4 children at the moment. Do you identify, how do you identify the children? Are there a sort of greater range, but you sort of have to keep you have to be aware of numbers or who's fit to be placed, and also following that, when they are placed to go home, how long do you sort of keep it open for the support with the family? How long does that go on for?
So in answer to your first question about how do we identify those children and families, there's a number of different ways. So that may be in supervision between the manager with the social worker. It may be that a child and family have initiated that, asked for that request themselves. A child or parent may have attended a Children We Care For review and asked that question there. So yeah, there's lots of different ways. And then once we've identified those families or those children, we've got a tracker, and so the 3 adult workers that sit in our team review. They come to we have a weekly tracker meeting, and we review all of the children that are on there. So those are the children where we're looking at a plan for potentially return home in 12 months and under. Some are 12 months and over, so we've got a little bit more support work to do. And for those children and families where, a return home is not achievable right now, we'll look at what the need is for the parents, and we'll continue to do that. And we're trying to improve the relationships constantly between parents and the children's team, because, we know that's key, and that's going to support children as they go beyond 18. So where possible, we'll move family time out into the community, into a more natural environment, and we'll remove it from being supervised to unsupervised. So the complexity of the work is really individual and child-led. But yeah, that once they're on that pathway, we review and monitor and support. And sometimes things change quite rapidly. But yeah, we just roll with that and work with bumps in the road like normal families have.
And does it stay with your team once they've gone home? And hopefully we have a lovely happy ending.
Yes.
Once they've gone home, how long do they have support? Is that through this team still?
Yes.
And how long would that last? Because as we've read, and like you say, and echo what Tom said, it's really nice to see these sort of examples of children that have returned home. But if there is a breakdown for any reason, it may not necessarily be within a couple of weeks, but it could be a year later. How do we keep on track, making sure these children are safe?
So we remain involved. Initially, when a child returns home, we're complete weekly visits. So that'll be a weekly visit from a children's social worker and from the adult worker. And we also have monthly meetings with the parents, foster carers if they've been involved, and they generally have, and just check how things are going. And then we adapt the plan and the level of visits. But it's really difficult to answer that question because it's on individual families. But one of the journeys in the report, we've been involved with the family for almost 2 years, and we're discharging the care order on 3 siblings next month. And we remained supporting and including the adult worker for all that time. There were periods when we were looking to discharge, and unfortunately there was a blip in Mum's mental health, and then because she was so involved and always working with us, we were able to avoid them coming back into care. We found family members, we supported for a period, and then we returned them back to Mum's care altogether. And these are the children that I'm talking about where we're discharging. So anything from 6 months to a year to maybe 2 years, and yeah, it is an increased amount of support, but the outcomes are they absolutely are, yeah.
Thank you. I think you just injected a perfect example, Renee, of actually how the story brings a paper to life. And it's been, the questions have been great, but actually we do feel, you can feel it. And actually this is the bread and butter work in the portfolio every single day, even though sometimes the reports look like a load of numbers and measurements, that there are, individuals in there. And I think the other thing that comes through completely, and again, this is embedded across the entire directorate and beyond in the council, is the emphasis on relationships. And actually, one size does not fit all. And yeah, it was just so interesting. So interesting. Sarah, did you want to come back in? Were you?
I think for me it's everything that we always set out to do, and I think family safeguarding has got so much potential to go so much further. We never, we always used to say, well, there's nowhere for the parents to go. They don't quite meet threshold for adult services. If only we could. And suddenly there was this moment of realisation in another authority that we could bring those adult workers into our system, and actually the potential to be able to bring them into even more of our system just goes to show what we can achieve. And to see those relationships and the confidence growing with our social workers has been immense. And I think, the other bit that I spoke about, it's led to that better stability in the team with the social workers. It has been incredibly hard in that bit of the service with turnover, with staff moving on. And yet I think this has enabled Renee to build a stable social work service and a bit of service that people want to be in because they can see the outcomes that are being achieved. Not to say it isn't really hard at times, and there are really hard and difficult decisions, but it's worth it for every child that does get to be and maintain and have those relationships with their parents, because there are too many children and young people in our care experience service who haven't had that opportunity. And I think moving forward we will see a difference with the children and young people who move there, because they will have better connections.
Thank you. Well, it was another report for noting, and I think if I thank the officers for taking the time to write the report, but I think we'll all agree that it's a really good time invested. Hopefully, by writing the report, you can also then take that back to the team and say how well it was received, and also for us here as members, it will stay with us, so that in our conversations across the city, we will have a better knowledge of actually the good practice that is going on literally outside our doors, but we might not have known about. So thank you very much. Both the reports were great today. So thank you to members for their good questions, and thank you to officers for writing the reports. And then we will end the meeting. Thank you.